Hello, it's Brad, Laurie, or Blockchain Brad, and today we're speaking about all things UREEQA. That's right, it's a name you may not know on the blockchain, but certainly you know the implication of this when we find nuggets that are out there in the world, and that's what we're doing right now when we explore this startup. To do this and to explore this deeply, we have the CEO in the hot seat. His name is Harsch. Thank you very much, mate, for being here to explain all things UREEQA.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
No problem. Now, for transparency, Harsch and I have had a long interview, or more importantly, a pre-chat before, and that was a really informative one for me to help understand exactly the beginnings. And so as a result, this interview has happened. Also, it's important I do not own any of these tokens, but certainly when it comes to investment, I'm definitely considering this for the future, simply based on the interest I have in this team, in this tech and this token. Now, UREEQA is something, Harsch, that a lot of people don't know about, as I've said. But copyright is something everyone does know about. So without trying to FOMO this, in the narratives that we see, running around the crypto space, let's pull it back to the protection aspect of this, because you're focused on protecting work, protecting our rights, and making sure that our revenue is protected in that sense, and we can do this in a very seamless way. So all those things are a lot to deal with. But can you simplify UREEQA in that context?
Yeah, sure, Brad. I think I'd just quickly like to start with the why. And I always start with, what, your viewers should know this. We found many ways to divide us as a people, age, ethnicity, gender, income levels. But creative work is the one thing that binds us together. Some of us like to listen to music, watch videos like this, read books. We all enjoy creative work, and those people get ripped off every day. A recent study showed that 85% of all images on the internet were used without permission, for example. That's the problem we're trying to solve, as you spoke about. And so UREEQA is really a platform for protecting, managing, and monetizing creative work. And by doing that, we hope to help protect creators' work, their rights, and their revenue.
Right. Well, that sounds like it's pretty standard, though, in the sense of if we look at copyright that already exists around the world, we've read books back in 1900s and long before, hopefully. And we know that copyright's been issues all the way back then without all the technologies that exist today. So why the blockchain? Why UREEQA? Why does this matter when we know that copyright's always mattered?
Right. I love this interview, Brad. Usually I only get like 2 minutes to say the piece, so we can go deeper here.
We can.
So, all right, so there's this convention called the Burden Convention. It's an agreement between 179 countries. And one of the basic principles is that you automatically get copyright protection when you create the work. So no one really needs copyright protection. You automatically get it. In fact, that's why lots of countries like UK, for example, don't even have a national copyright registry. You don't need to register it for protection. But the problem is they kick it down to the courts to enforce it. So what you do need is a package of proof. So if someone does come after you or you want to play offense, you have a package of proof that typically a lawyer would prepare to go to court. And so we're less of a copyright on blockchain, as people would paint us with a broad brush, and more of a proof and enforcement company, a package of proof and enforcement company.
Got it. Okay, so that would mean that in this sense, the blockchain could be an engine fundamentally that really just facilitates the company. It's another aspect that almost a bespoke system where one spoke is the blockchain that's new, innovative. You can really add value to the company that you're building. So obviously you're working with the blockchain. We know now, looking through the information, that Ethereum is very important to your design, but as you mentioned, that's not first and foremost on the agenda. That's a part of it. So do you want to touch on that a little bit more, that interrelationship and interplay between the blockchain engine component and the whole vision of the company itself?
Okay, so let's start high level vision. We want to tackle IP protection. If you zoom out, we're going to end up in patents, trademarks, industrial designs. But obviously you have to start, walk before you run. So we're zooming in to copyright. That's where we're focusing. So we want to tackle this problem of IP protection. And we want to do it in a way that we can service people who don't know anything about crypto or people who have crypto. As we looked at the best way to solve this problem, and we looked at the tools at our disposal, we clearly identified blockchain to create the immutable timestamp for staking a claim, for minting NFTs to represent someone's rights to the creative work, Then we needed some fertile ground for initial adoption and an army of people to perform the validation steps. In the validation steps, we answered 3 very important questions: authorship, who created it; ownership, who owns it; and originality, is this original or was it copied? So we're gonna onboard and train an army of validators who attempt to answer those questions. Those people will be paid in our fungible ERC20 URQA token. Okay, so now the solution's becoming clearer. We have the blockchain, we explain what that's for, we have the people who are gonna perform the validations, and our customers. Now, most creators don't know anything about crypto.
No.
So we need, even though the ethos and experience of blockchain is woven into the fabric of this platform we're building, we need to provide an end-to-end experience for users who know nothing about crypto. So you can, on our platform, end-to-end pay in fiat with credit card. And at the end, a creator can have an NFT. They don't even need to know it's an NFT. They can download a QR code, for example, print it in their books. They can put it on their website. Someone scans it. It goes to the UREEQA premium protected page, provides all the information on the creative work, for example. So our solution leverages the best of blockchain, best of the crypto community, and services a large group that actually doesn't even need to know about crypto.
Well, let's talk about that a bit more. What you said about the NFT, it's not really something I've ever heard of before, but it makes sense. Now, in the crypto sphere, everyone talks about, especially 221, about NFTs. It's a really hot topic right now, especially in the Ethereum camp, but we know NFTs are applied across a myriad of blockchains, and experimentation's really popular at the moment. But if we're thinking about that mainstream user, that lay user, an interactant in a sort of the context of copyright and the platform that you actually want to build, which is another important aspect you mentioned. It's not going to be just copyright. You want it to be where they don't need to know even the terminology like NFT. So what will it be like if let's pull me out of crypto for a moment, out of blockchain. What would it be like for me if I want to interact NFT-like as someone who isn't, in the blockchain sphere, if I wanted to just be a user?
So if you're a user, you just know that the work you submit is going to be validated. And at the end, it's going to be proven, and it's going to be proven on the blockchain. It so happens to be an NFT. But you just know through your dashboard that it's validated. So if someone goes to your UREEQA Premium Protected page, they will see information on you, on the creative work, on the validation steps performed, and there'll be a QR code. You don't need to ever interact with the NFT.
Right.
If you want to.
Well, I was going to say, that is the carrot. That's the goal. That's the eureka moment, really. No pun intended. Or let's go there. Why not? It's actually the validation. It's not even just copyright. It's the validation process that you're building into the whole platform you have, so that I know as a user, regardless of blockchain, regardless of content, whether it's, it's Logan Paul or someone else out there, or someone like me doing content right now through this medium as well, that validation is going to be the secret sauce. And so you're saying that you're doing something innovative by bringing in the blockchain into the conversation, making it a 24/7 system, it's interactive, we can interact with, and the validation process is open source, really, through the design. So that's where the engine does change again, but the fundamental is the validation itself.
That's right. And if I were to distill our unique selling proposition, it would be that, and that is the process that we've have a patent pending on. And in fact, one thing I didn't mention is we go one step further. We're also going to onboard and train a group of protectors who proactively go out and find infringing parties, report them to the owners of items in the UREEQA Premium Protected Collection. And then those owners can send out demand letters, and they can say, hey, here's our package of proof on UREEQA. You're clearly infringing. You have 2 choices, take it down, or here's a link, pay us $1,000 or whatever is specified by the creator. And if not, we reserve the right to seek legal counsel, and we can help with a graceful handoff to a legal team.
I see. And I noticed you do have a strong legal counsel. I had a look at your team, and there's so much we've got to talk about. We're going to break this interview down into 3 parts for those wondering, and this is part 1. Now let's go back to those 4 W's. Now you talked a bit about that why. What's exciting at the moment is we see all these challenges with some of those social platforms, with some of those media platforms, where it's not always easy to monetize. Sometimes you're impinged just simply by being a small little man, little guy in the space, because you might not have huge reach. Now, how do you compare yourself? How do you situate yourself in the sort of scenario of some of these mainstream providers that do allow monetization and do allow arguably some validation, or do they?
Well, okay, so probably the biggest example of copyright protection as it exists today is the US Copyright Office. For work created by Americans in America, people go and submit there. It takes 3 months to get a piece of paper and a database entry that says, Brad says this is his. They clearly say, and you can go on our website, UREEQA.io, they clearly say we perform no steps to ensure that it's original and hasn't been filed before. So to our knowledge, we are the first building a package of proof. We're working, you can look at our legal team, we're working with the top folks in the space, people who deal with copyright day in, day out. They are guiding the process to build this package of proof. And I think that that's really innovative, the way we're tackling this problem, actually building a package of proof that whether you're a small creator or a large creator, you need to play offense or defense with to protect your rights.
And what's interesting too, even in the chats we've had before, as the DD process has been going on, it's amazing how focused you are in relation to the SEC, the CFTC, and even beyond. You're really trying to make sure you cross your T's, dot your I's, get this right, and also be regulated and compliant, because the market arguably for this as well, Harsch, is really big. Forget FOMO, that's just old news. But the reality is this is a global problem, isn't it?
It really is. And if you look at the market, anyone investing in anything should look at first, what's the problem being solved? How big is the market? Is it growing? Clearly intellectual property protection, and we've outlined it in the white paper, 10 billion, growing. It's going to be growing faster if there's a easy, simple way to do it, like on UREEQA. And so, we're focused on this for the long term, and that's why we're taking the steps to be fully compliant. We're not doing a public solicitation for funding. We're actually proactively going to the Canadian version of the SEC for their blessings through their Launchpad program. We're working with the top fintech lawyer, voted 2 years in a row in Canada. These things are important to us. Disney, for example, won't come on as a client years from now if we're being hounded by the SEC. We're taking a longer term view on this. This does not mean that we won't have exciting updates along the way. We know how the space works, and we're prepared for that. But it's a solid business we're building. Absolutely.
And, I like the word long-term that you said as well. I think that that's undervalued in crypto, because so many people want to have those quick pump and dumps, or want to have that, sweet moment where suddenly they get a 10x, but then can move on. This is not about like that sort of thing when you say long-term. And when you say things like Disney, I know what you're like. You're not trying to suggest people should pay attention to that as a hint. What you're really saying here is, well, this is a highly respected company in the world right across. And if they're ever going to take you seriously, you have to be serious from the start. So do you think that's a fair assessment, is that, with your business experience, that from the beginning, you've got to get this right legally?
Definitely. We don't want to build this on a house of cards. I've seen in this space, a lot of people prematurely tease things solely for the purpose of successful token generation and launch, and that has detrimental effects to the medium and longer term impacts on the company. We're not like that. We're focused on building value. It's what we've done outside of crypto. It's what we intend to do within crypto. Anyone could go on UREEQA.io, check our team. We've spent many years, decades building a solid reputation outside of crypto. We don't intend to come here and blow it on a pump and dump.
Right. And I when I was studying you before we had our first chat, I remember even talking to you about this. We talked about the capital firm related, or the investment arm, and it's very strong, with Kane Capital. Is that the right term? Is that the right?
That's right.
Firm?
Ultimately, yeah. Okay.
So the reason I mention is because when people go and research, that anyone can do this, you quickly see that you have a business, background. You have an engineering background as well. Is that correct?
That's right. So I actually did engineering at the University of Waterloo, coincidentally, where Vitalik went. By no means am I saying I'm anywhere close to Vitalik. I'm just, we went to the same university. And then I did my MBA at Canada's top business school as well. So I have both the engineering side, business, and I have grown into an investor. A lot of what we do is through Kane Capital, and we're deep value investors.
Well, let's talk about this, Harsch, because you have you've won a lot of awards. So again, this is about hype, not about hype, but if it is hype, so be it. So you've had engineering, you've got the business background, you've certainly proven yourself in the business world. Anyone can go and check that. But when I was looking initially, I thought, well, is this going to be a a capital firm initiated startup? Is this something really, because capital to me means, trying to make money. But then I asked you this directly. I said, is this about your engineering background first and foremost, or is this about, a business strategy? So when someone's really speculating and they're trying to look into this deeply, what would you say to them when they start to question the thing of, is this born out of the desire to capitalize on the blockchain, or is this born out of a genuine use case and a genuine solution that we absolutely need?
The best evidence I could give that it's more than money is I genuinely do not want fame. I don't like being the front person. In fact, I've paid people in the past to run companies, so I don't. So the fact that I'm actually coming out on interviews, talking about it, running this as an active CEO, even though I've managed CEOs for other companies, is because I'm genuinely excited about this.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Hunter does not come on and spend the time he does on UREEQA. I mean, he was voted top corporate lawyer in Canada. Where people, we've worked together for decades. We're so excited about this that we're spending a significant portion of time. We're being very public about it. We genuinely are excited. And what's amazing to me is, on Ferrum, I said that we're not actively going after big names yet. We want to do the closed beta and grow from there. Big names, I mean, recognizable names are coming to us and saying, from the artist community, and saying, hey, we saw what you're doing. We love what you're doing. And the outpour of just love and from the artist community is just kind of humbling. It just kind of, it validates the decision to go out of my comfort zone and actually be more public with this sort of venture.
And Harsch, I have to say, I mean, having done this for so many years now, I thought this would happen. To be honest, I thought eventually that it would become almost a millennial move for CEOs to come on board to the sort of the front media arena, in that they would learn that they have to engage in this crypto space in a very public way. And I appreciate that, because you really do need to inform and educate those initially kickstarting this whole global movement that you're building. And ironically, it does come from that. So we really appreciate that you're savvy enough to get it, to have these conversations with me. And I really do hope, that Tom does. Is it Tom Hunter? You said?
Tom Hunter.
Yeah, I really do hope. I think I'll be able to get him on, because this matters, and we're switching gears now into real conversations. We can see that right now, that we're not playing around with, pump strategies and pump conversations. These are real. And so in that sense, I really wanted to ask you something that you mentioned before, or touch on it. So at the moment, these big names are coming in, having these conversations with you. But would that be because you have those protections and validations built in that before we just haven't had? And I mean this in the context of all the narratives and all the hype of NFTs even. Many of them don't have this key protection. So is this the reason why these artists are coming to you?
From what I'm seeing, there's, they really like one central spot where they can upload work as they create it, then for free. They're not under any pressure to timestamp it, but they have the ability to very quickly to secure the date and time. And then they can take protection further, which they couldn't do conveniently before. So this platform that doesn't force them to do anything at any time, as the work kind of evolves, they can take whatever protection. That's what it seems like they're really, that's really resonating with them. Yeah. And obviously the NFT angle, and specifically in crypto, I'll talk about that. So what's happening right now in crypto, which is great for all of us, is it's bringing excitement to the space. Outside of crypto, people are coming in, owning digital art on the blockchain. People within crypto are starting to buy assets, NFT assets. And I think once the sugar high wears off, people are going to ask three very important questions. Authorship: who created the work, that image, that video of Kobe dunking that you love? Who created it? Who owns it? And is it original? And when that sugar high wears off and people ask those important questions, UREEQA will be there to answer it for them.
And do you think they're already asking this? Because we already see the immense value of some of these NFTs, some of these digital assets that are coming forth. And there's so many more. I noticed even recently with Paradigms, one of the key members of that team, who is an investment firm, well respected in the space, Charlie said NFTs are one of the things coming forth. And we know that's nuanced also with the Ethereum camp, because he does invest a lot in relation to that. But he's also a macro thinker. He's also agnostic in the investments that Paradigm make. So if NFT is such a hot investment sort of strategy for right now, surely underneath that bedrock protection is going to be even more prominent and more relevant as we start to see some of these people realize, wait, I haven't got protections in boy, I haven't got those validations. Maybe I need to go and give UREEQA a call.
Definitely. And so unlike other works that end up being minted as an NFT, a song, for example, our NFT will be the first NFT. However, if someone has digital art on another platform, but then gets it validated, the source file validated through our process, specifically for digital art NFTs, our NFT might actually be thought of as a certificate of authenticity, much like you would never trade a rare baseball card or rare gold or silver coin without that certificate of authenticity.
I see. So, really it's about making sure, much like you go to an auction, the reputation, your reputation is going to be everything when it comes to this global trust, in a trustless system, because they're going to trust you to make sure that they can reap the benefits and get the incentives, get the rewards for their content or for their creation.
That's what we see happening.
Okay, so how big could this be? Let's be real. I mean, we were going to talk next about your experience, but people can go and read about it. There's so much you've done. We can touch on it a little bit today, but I really want to get into the guts of what this could be. I mean, surely this is going to be something very significant if you're one of the first movers in this industry.
Yeah, so it's actually, the potential's so vast that one of the challenges running this company will be, how do we prioritize these opportunities? So for example, this weekend, actually just before I spoke to you this weekend, a band member from a band that had the #1 hit of the year on the Billboard Top Hot 100 one year contacted me, said, hey, I see what you guys are doing. Want to say I love it. I want to help support it however I can. That led to discussions about, hey, what if we do an online concert and people can pay in UREEQA tokens? And now these aren't things that we thought of right now, and we may not go off and do it right now, but I'm just saying that we've had multiple conversations like that. What if, for example, launch pads are huge right now in crypto. Everyone loves these launch pads. What if we had an artist launch pad? An artist comes on and you could buy 20% or auction off 20% paid only in UREEQA tokens of future earnings of that artist or of this particular piece of art or this particular song. I mean, these kinds of things are possible. So the market size and growth isn't really the issue.
Wow. I mean, I have never had anyone talk about something like that before. Wow, you're throwing my interview a little bit, because what's exciting about that is when we think of Launchpad, often we think of that in the intra crypto sphere again, or that crypto space. And often it can be about trying to launch something for that really fast, aggressive, exciting momentum that's sort of garnered from that inner space. But when you do something like that, not only is it pragmatic, is it real, it's based on the reach of the entire globe. If we're talking about people who are #1, musicians, or, those who had #1 hits, that's a big deal. That's millions and millions in reach. So if the utility's there and, has that payment part built into the utility model, are we really missing the mark right now? Are we possibly not thinking big enough when it comes to launch pads, real launch pads for a real use case for something like this? If we're talking about creators and we're talking about content, if you're tapping into the people who are known around the world, surely some of us are missing the mark when we think small in the launchpad sense.
I think so. And I think there's a tendency, again, this is with my limited experience in this space, but I notice a tendency in the space to view everything through a strictly 100% decentralized lens. And there are use cases in the space that lend themselves to 100% decentralization. But there are times when, you need a hybrid, because the logic isn't deterministic enough to implement with smart contracts. So a lot of people focus just on DeFi only applications. And now we're like real world people bringing a real world problem, of which blockchain solves a major part of it, but there's other parts to be solved, and it's opening up a whole new market as well. So a different way of thinking of it. I think that as this space evolves, we're just one puzzle piece that'll form the final picture as the space evolves. And it's an important piece. And I think it's a piece that, bodies like the SEC want to see more teams like us coming in, and they will eventually give us better
Yes.
clarity on legal frameworks to make that happen.
Yes. And what I love, is that we're finally in 221 in this conversation where technologically we can have it. And you would know that because you've probably been waiting for the blockchain to mature enough to do this. And it's interesting because CeFi is always thrown around and so is DeFi. But the reality is this is about opening up the conversation of finance technologically so that the legacy models that can be thrown out, but not the baby with the bathwater, and bring the best of CeFi and DeFi together. And that's why I really wanted to talk to you. And that's why I want to invest potentially in UREEQA, because you can't deny the business models of today and even yesterday. And that's where your experience is really proof of that. So do you want to touch on all the things you've done already, if you wanted to condense it down to sort of pitch to everybody, you're the real deal?
Well, I mean, over the past, I've graduated from engineering in 98, so over 20 years now. And I would say in those 2 decades or so, I've built a lot of experience at the intersection of 3 things that are very important and relevant to this: technology, business, and investing. So let's first talk about technology. So I graduated 1998, started a tech company. We developed some engineering software, computer-aided manufacturing. We sold it 2 years later to the largest aerospace manufacturer that's privately owned in the US. So straight out of university, started a tech company, sold it 2 years later. Tech experience. Business. At that age, I read a book called Multiple Streams of Income by Robert Allen. And I told myself, I'm going to have multiple streams of incomes. I could live off anyone, even if the others fail. And I knew real estate had to be part of it. So we started investing in real estate. And we grew that in Tampa and Southwestern Ontario to 350 houses and apartments in Tampa. And now 300,000 or so square feet commercial in Southwestern Ontario. And we've had multiple 7, 8 bigger exits.
Well, can I interrupt there and ask you something? Are you a bit of an Alex Mashinsky in this sense, where Alex, when I spoke with him from Celsius Network, he is trying to revolutionize finance in his way, and he didn't need to do that. He could have just quit, working for anyone and just gone and bought his own island probably. But he was passionate about doing something that was for the people and committed to that. So are you that kind of personality, Harsch? Are you someone that is successful, doesn't really need to do this, but does this because you're driven by something more?
I guess so. I mean, I don't want to come across as cocky, but I mean,
well, you don't.
We've self-funded to date, and fortunately, we're in a position to continue doing that. And I genuinely didn't have to do this. In fact, my friends are wondering, why am I at this age going? But really, so what I've done, I've made some money and my family will be fine and everything's great. But what did I do for the world? And what we're doing with UREEQA can actually improve the lives of the very same people that improve our lives. I was speaking to the band member I was talking to you about earlier. And
you're not going to tell us? You're not going to tell us who?
Well, he said we could, but an article, I don't want to steal thunder of our CMO. But,
okay.
And I was telling this guy, I ran businesses, I've made money, I've done well, but I haven't impacted lives like you. My sister danced to your song at her wedding. That's the impact you had on people. And these are the people we're going to help with UREEQA. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. That's what I could leave. Like, you in our private conversations, you talk about your kids and them being proud of what you do. Same thing. This is what, I could.
And, and that's the thing. Nothing's really private when it comes to being real. I mean, I genuinely want my children to be able to engage in blockchain in a way that is meaningful. So let's talk about that and extend this beyond our own kids. Now, how do you reach the underbanked? And I know that word is also used in crypto, but in reality, that's also a beautiful potential of this kind of melee between CeFi and blockchain. So we talked about these big names, these #1 hits and these #1 artists that are big deal. But what about those that are just starting out? What about enfranchising the world over, who are content creators that don't get a good deal and they're in really difficult regions of the world? How could UREEQA help them?
So actually, one of the things that we're planning to do on an annual basis is we're going to have this program called the UREEQA 100. And we're actually going to give 100 licenses to colleges, universities, community colleges in developing nations. And they're going to give their students or content creators free licenses on UREEQA to perform their validation, to protect their work. And we're going to get the community to vote to rank the UREEQA 100, and almost like a top 40 under 40 thing. It'll be like, this is the UREEQA 100 for 2021, for example. That's one thing. And then obviously we'll be able to accept fiat, crypto, anyone with an internet connection, and the way the space is growing will have access to pay us in a very convenient way, even if they don't have a bank account.
Wow. Okay, so you're really starting to uplift that social mobility, that economic mobility for certain parties. That I'm a big proponent of. I really wish I had known you even earlier than this. I definitely would have called you and said, look, I'll pay to come and be one of your advisors and help you with this when it comes, because that's what I'm really passionate about, is helping people. But on that, I am going to be announcing an advisory role of something of that nature for the future and potential. But let's go back to this though. Okay, so we've talked about music, but what kind of verticals could this reach? I mean, when we talk about those general words of creation and content, doesn't that mean really anything?
Let me tell you how far it could reach. I had no clue it would reach here. Again, out of the blue, this creator contacts us. He's a world famous sculptor. He's been commissioned by cities to do works in $5 to $15 million range, because apparently when the skyscrapers being built, the cities sometimes require a certain percentage of the total cost to be commissioned for art. So so it doesn't just look like all these giant buildings. And he's a sculptor who's been commissioned by cities before, and he is actually pledging some of his works for protection during our closed beta. That tells you, I mean, a sculptor, we didn't even think of that before. I mean, it's very broad reaching, the term creator and what's protected and what can be protected.
And are they coming to you? Like, how are these people hearing about you when you're still relatively unknown?
We really are. I mean, we got like 500 people in our Telegram. I'm surprised, actually. So the sculptor actually came through our network, and that's one benefit of us having been in business for a long time. So one of the founders, that's through his network. But the band member actually came through crypto. He was, he's into crypto. He was looking at a project. He saw something about UREEQA. He checked it out, and he looked me up, and he contacted, we talked on Telegram first, and then we met in via Zoom.
And it just goes to show, I mean, what I've noticed also is that into crypto, some of the connections go all the way to the top. They really do. And they can really enfranchise this kind of movement we're creating now with decentralized finance, particularly as the bedrock, where people all the way to the best celebrities are coming on board with different things, because now there's more of an opening legally for some of that complexity and those barriers to entry, even all the way to, I guess, those entities that aren't necessarily celebrity, but are well known for different reasons in different verticals, all the way to the top of major businesses. That's where your value comes in, because your network was already so substantial before for the right industry, but then there's interconnection between those and other verticals as well. So I thought, even though you haven't got many in this industry yet, in crypto, in terms of subscribers and followers, you've definitely got a network there, and we can talk about more of that in part 3. But I want to go back to, I guess, the discussion a bit more on your premium protected collection, the NFTs, because again, it's really to sort of plug the NFT narrative a little bit, but also to clarify it, because it does cop a lot of flack from some technologists who say it's just a fad. So what would you say to those, if you're trying to build out this value of NFT in the context of just the scope of all things that can be sort of switched into a validated piece of content or creation?
So, if I were to classify the fad, it would be along the lines of, I like this collectible card, and I'm going to put a similar image and mint it as an NFT and sell it, or this video of Kobe dunking or something. It's non-fungible, meaning each one's unique. Each one's unique. Each piece of creative work is unique. It's on the blockchain to represent that creator's creative rights to their unique work. It's a perfect use case for NFTs. And it's in this context, it's clearly not a fad. And once we represent the creative rights with that NFT, it opens up possibilities of, now that it's validated as per this NFT, what can we, what monetization opportunities, what other opportunities can grow out of that that NFT ownership.
Right. And does it surprise you, given that there is a specific type of, I guess, design of this. With you have the ERC 20, obviously that fundamental digital asset base, and then you have the ERC 721. That's the very important NFT code. Does it surprise you that hasn't been done before? It always did for me. I could never understand why there wasn't the copyright protections right from the outset provided when this came out.
Well, there've been many blockchain copyright on blockchain type startups. It was one of the first use cases talked about. But all those solutions are blockchain 1.0 solutions. All they do is essentially what the National Copyright Registry does. It says, Brad says this work is his. It does no steps to determine the answers to those three important questions we keep talking about during the validation process. To my knowledge, no one else is doing that, and that's where we're unique.
And is it also fair to say, let's talk about the competitors then, because you'll be able to teach me. Now, with all the business and team experience that you bring to the fore and bring to the table for UREEQA, what's the fundamental determiner that sets you apart from the pre-existing sort of startups? Because that's going to be important as we unpack and explore UREEQA for the future. And it's also going to be important for those who are making bets on the utility, because they want to support the utility, because they will be able to on the exchanges. That's the whole idea, is to bolster and build the engine that is the token itself. So how do you sort of I guess explain the difference, in a very clear way that sets you apart in every way?
Well, I mean, clearly those attempts fell short because all they did was what was done in the real world on the blockchain. They didn't push the envelope into the realm of the package of proof, into the realm beyond that, into enforcement. So from a vision, execution standpoint, assuming we can execute, that's a differentiator. Now, when betting on startups, one of the main factors is team. So I'll talk a little bit about, we talked a lot about me. I'll talk about Tom Hunter. We talked about that he was voted top corporate lawyer in Canada. So let me tell you the power of someone like Tom. Tom and I were talking 2 weeks ago, and we said, we should build an advisory board of people who understand the creator community and are respected. So Tom's like, let me make some calls. Less than 2 weeks later, we've signed up our first advisor. This person, we're going to announce it closer to TGE, but this person, if you look at, he's the president of a company, if you look at his website and you look at the artists he works with, musicians, they will include names that your kids know and love, that you know and love, and that your parents know and love. That's the range of clients you'll see on this person's website. One phone call, one meeting with us three.
What I really like also, having been involved in the advisory game as well, trying to be part of a really strong advisory board, you've got to get it right. You only get one shot. And whether they're in crypto, whether they're out, they have to understand what they do implicitly and do it well. So is this just the beginning? Are you going to build out this full advisory board? I mean, and why are you doing it now? Why didn't you do it earlier? Because, where are we at in the roadmap? I mean, I can't even speak. There's so many things that I want to ask you, but knowing that advisory is mainstream, knowing that this person is in a situation where they can make those calls to that kind of that person who then can relate back to that token, everything is lining up for me.
I came up with the original idea early last year. I probably spent Q2 building the team. Together we refined the team you see on the website. We refined the idea. We hired a scientific advisor to work on blockchain stuff. We brought back a dev that used to work with us and now has his own startup to kickstart the development. We hired another one. We got 2 more co-op students. They've been working for 2 quarters on this. We're within just over a month, March 23rd, we're actually going to flip the switch on a closed beta. We're actually pre-registering people at ureeqa.com. And that's where we are now. The closed beta was designed, closed environment, couple hundred users. Let's test the system. Let's get user feedback. Let's perfect the system so that when we actually go out to a broader community, bring in more recognizable names, we'll put a better foot forward. I didn't expect at this point that those sort of names would come to us and that we'd have to reach out and start building this advisory board this quickly. So it's actually moving faster and better than I thought. But one of the one of the things I need to carefully manage is sustainable growth. We can go off on tangents, doing a virtual concert, going down the sculptor road, a bunch of different things, selling fractional ownership of a person's art in perpetuity. We could do all kinds of things. We got to nail this closed beta. Then we got to onboard more creators. We got to onboard some small corporations, some larger corporations. We're going to build it systematically. And that's really because there's such a open space with so many opportunities. I got to make sure we don't introduce too much scope creep and go off on tangents and still accomplish what we set out to.
Well, you've got the business experience because, you are a CEO, you know how to hone in and focus on that. And people are going to have to trust that, your track record. That's the whole point of these exciting startups that utilize the benefits of the blockchain. Now, on that note, quite literally, you have the URQA. That's going to be the ticker for the token. As I understand, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Now, I want to better understand this because you mentioned before about payment. We talked about Ethereum being the beginning for this as well. That key fungible and non-fungible aspect as well is built in, which is great. Has to be for the functionality of what you want. But what about for those who are, the speculative those with the speculative mindset, those who want to know about the FOMO, the promo, and all of this? Let's get down into discussion of the token itself. What can you tell us about the token design in terms of staking, in terms of how you built this for the long term to be a genuine utility? And I obviously would love to talk to Tom about this specifically because it's got to be also legally based, entrenched as a viable, real thing. And you being in Canada as well, even more so, there's stringent rules to make sure this is going to be something of the future. So let's discuss that. Take that away. How can this token be proven to be valuable, real, and long term?
Okay, so first off, when designing utility, we always put ourselves in the token holder shoes. Would we want to own it? And we did get to that place, and I'll explain what the utility is. So first of all, on-platform utility. You can obviously pay with fiat, but if you pay with URQA, you're going to get discounts compared to fiat. Second, there will be opportunities to lock URQA, and for the period for which it's locked, you have pro access. Pro accounts are going to be $99 a year. So there's value there. We're going to have opportunities for you to farm useful NFTs. So you can lock a certain amount of URQA for, let's say 6 months, and you can farm an NFT that maybe gives you 25% more validator rewards for life, for example. We're going to have staking rewards. We're going to have early incentive rewards as the platform builds traction. And most importantly, and what sold me on it was, we're actually going to have a concept of a community enrichment wallet. Mm-hmm. So at token generation, millions of tokens are going to go to this wallet, and they can only come out based on community votes. That excludes team and advisors. As long as whatever is proposed passes our legal team, the token holders can decide how it's used.
Wow.
They may bonus. Yeah.
So that's like a Robin Hood moment, quite literally. No pun intended with the previous dramas we've seen, but that's where you're giving back to the community through this incentivized system, through this community program. That's going to go down well. So in that sense, did you really sit down at a table with many others that are really experts in tokenomic design to get this right? Well,
we're dealing with Ferrum Advisory Services, and they've dealt with 40 plus clients, and we've relied heavily on them, particularly with the tokenomics, but also utility. And in the meetings I've had with many people in crypto, different projects, market makers, all VCs, all different types of people, they get the parallels for the different aspects of the utility in different projects that were successful. So I think that resonates. But remember what we talked about earlier. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We're always going to think of new ways to add value. What if you could only participate in a concert with UREEQA tokens? What if you could only buy fractional ownership of a song with UREEQA tokens? These sorts of things, as the platform evolves, we'll add and we'll layer on more and more utility.
Yeah, and you hinted at the beginning, which is the most exciting part for me, is that you're building a platform that we don't even yet know is the full shape and picture and may never know, because of the potential of this to really emerge as a very multi-tiered, multifaceted network system and platform. But I want to go back to that token again, because obviously when you do the design, you think of all the different people that need to benefit from this. What's the lockup process? How do you protect the integrity of this token for the utility itself? Because honestly, Harsch, so many of the tokenomic designs don't do this well, and so they stuff it up, and as a result, the utility is compromised by dumping, by exits, and it's just rubbish. And that happens all the way from top tier to down. So the big question is, to VC, not to VC? How do you protect the integrity by making sure the distribution's right? There's so much. So what can you disclose at this point, pre-TGE, with regard to how you've built this in so that we can trust, transparently, that this has all been considered properly?
Yeah, so because we're fully compliant, what we can disclose with the tokenomics is in our white paper. So you'll see by category how many tokens there are. Okay. But I mean, coincidentally, I have the actual tokenomics here, in which anyone who goes through our whole fully compliant process after an NDA will get it. But I could talk about lockup. So for example, our team, I'm looking at it now, that's why our team is locked for 8 months, and then it vests over 20 months. Angel rounds locked for 1 month and then vests over 10 months. Strategic round, 15% to TGE, 25%, 25%, 10%. Private round, 20% to TGE. And operations marketing locked for 3 months and then vest over 10 months each. So there is a decent sized lockup. Obviously, as this platform grows, we're gonna need resources to build. You see the opportunities.
Yeah, and you're not going to get that transparency anywhere else in the world. You're really not, guys. If you're listening right now, this is the CEO of UREEQA telling you right now, and I've never seen that before. I've never seen someone read through that information, that detail. And as you said, also there's information in the white paper, but I think that's the most important thing, is having that transparency, making sure the lockups are there. And that's been written by several parties who, whether they're angel investors, whether they're VCs, or whether they're people like me, who are also trying to advocate for, really raising amounts of money that are practical, when it comes to this. So in that sense, how do you determine what's the right amount of money to raise? Because we've seen the likes of, I'm not even going to name names, let's just not, but some of them have raised ridiculous amounts of money, extremely avaricious, very greedy entities that really knew they didn't need to raise that capital. So what are your thoughts, given that you are coming from the business world, you know how the IPO model works implicitly? So what's the plan here with your cap and with your TGE?
Okay, so I'll be completely open with you. Like I said, we've self-funded and we're capable of funding going forward. Why did a big part of the crypto engaging the community is, for a product like this, adoption is key. And crypto communities is fertile ground for early adoption. So if we enlist a group of people who are aligned with our interests, it would only help with adoption. So that's why we went after, we do have pre-sale tokens, and if anyone goes through the fully compliant process, they could come in, and that's why we're doing it. Our goal with how much to raise is we wanted to have a runway of 2 years. And when you see how little we raised, how can we do that in 2 years? Well, we already have infrastructure. We're not charging UREEQA crazy rent. We're even pulling resources from other companies to help as required, as people in the office are working as community managers and things like that. So we're not blowing the budget unnecessarily. At the same time, we're spending where it makes sense. Dr. Shahin, who's doing our smart contracts, is a PhD from University of Waterloo. He was part of the blockchain research group. We're hiring a VP of engineering who had experience building out huge teams for another crypto startup. So we're not trying to go crazy and raise too much. At the same time, we want to have enough gas in the tank to take us far enough along where we're generating revenue. And
that's what we want to hear. And that's what we want to hear. And we've talked about this at length, about the importance of having that crossover. And that's where people like me fit in, I would think, because you want to make sure that you're educated about how the crypto system works. So you don't you lose out on that capitalizing. You don't lose out on that in that chessboard. Make sure you're moving in the right place at the right time, because you do want to be able to optimally move, and you want to move forward. If you're a real deal, I definitely wouldn't put my money into something that I didn't think is there for the long term. And that's why it's important that people do know I'm really considering this seriously right now, because let's be real as well. You want to make sure your start is right. But that's the question as well. We've seen VCs do this time in, time out. We've seen capital be the agenda. So to VC or not VC, you know, who engage and who not to. What are your thoughts on that, when often in reality, many VCs want to take a huge chunk of that capital pie?
So we've actually been approached by multiple VCs, and our preference is not really to engage them. We're talking to some still, but we haven't really engaged. We don't really, frankly, need the VC funding, and the market. I mean, it's not just that UREEQA is a great concept. The market's so hot right now that a lot of people are obviously showing interest in any tokens pre-sale. So I personally, I think our network's strong outside of crypto. We're good. We don't need the VC. We'd rather all things equal, give opportunities to people outside the VC community. That's a big part of what drew me into the blockchain space. I think it's going to democratize value. It's going to give opportunities to people one day that only the wealthy can access, like the IPO of Snowflake, for example. Why can't a kid in a village in India get a piece of the action of an opportunity like that? One day we'll get there. So we're not there yet, but my preference is actually to provide value to people who are willing to come along with the journey and help.
Absolutely, mate. I couldn't agree more. So, and obviously, in full transparency, we're not suggesting, I'm certainly not, that VCs don't play an important role, and that's not either lip service either. That's just the truth. You know, they do have a role to play, but in this instance, in this context, what I'm also hearing is you're not going after a lot of capital. So, what are the specifics there? Are you trying to raise a lot since you've been lean from the beginning? You've really bootstrapped this with your team. Are you going out to, you know, shoot for the stars in terms of reach, but are raising less, or what's the plan?
It's very conservative. We're already there, and we haven't done a public solicitation for funding.
So you're already there. You already hit.
We're already there. We're already past it. So
wow.
We're not even looking and talking about.
Okay, so that's done and dusted. Okay, congratulations on that. Now, in terms of the future, TGE, what can you tell us about that token generation event? And can you tell us a bit more about what you've been offered? I'd love to know that, because we talked about launchpads before, and there's a whole continuum of quality that exists out there, and there's only going to be more. There's going to be a huge amount of launchpads that emerge because they all want a piece of the, you know, the money pie too. So what's going on? What's the dates? What's the plan? And where are you headed?
So one of the things that's very important to us is being open and honest with the community. So our plan is, we've chosen the 23rd of every month to give an update. So coincidentally, March 23rd is when we're targeting for the token generation.
Okay.
And our legal advice has been such that we will pursue a centralized exchange listing to coincide with that, or shortly thereafter. And we're having discussions about that right now. We are not going to be going on a launch pad, and our legal advice is that there are actually cases right now that are involved in, are going to be involved in things in that space, so we should stay away. So
I think right. I've heard something similar for some of them as well, so I think that's prudent. But what about the nature of the centralized exchange too? I'd love to know what Tom thinks of them, because you have Coinbase, you have, you know, and everything beyond that, you have Binance, you have all these different ones. Now, I'm guessing from you that Coinbase is one you're exploring, because you'd be looking at the top cream of the crop, you know, ones that are regulated. So what are you going to tell us there?
What I'm going to tell you is we're new. So we're not at the point, and I don't feel comfortable yet playing any cards leading to Coinbase, even though I have personal connections with projects that are listed on there, but we're not there yet. So we're actually going to look at a centralized exchange that is well respected for compliance. I mean, there's lots of centralized exchanges with varying natures of compliance, and the one that we're leaning towards is heavy on the compliance side. And I think that by doing that, other bigger exchanges will piggyback on their legal due diligence, which will make the transition easy.
I see. Well, I won't be disrespectful and dig further because I can tell you're being very safe. But I can think of things like Kraken. I know that they're heavily regulated. They try to be. Thinking of US Binance as well, because their arm, the way they approach things, is very specific and has to be by the book. So I'm not going to press. I don't want to be rude and do that, but I do think that this one will be a big exchange. Is that fair to say?
I think it's an exchange that most investors will know of.
Now, with regard to, I guess, the final point, because the whole point of this discussion was part one, really to open up the conversation. I really appreciate your time. Now, if people are new to this, and I would assume most people are, how can they go and educate themselves more? How can they inform themselves more and also engage in those social platforms so that they can, I guess, just share their knowledge? Perhaps they're a content creator. Perhaps they are someone who wants to, inquire more about the facilities that you offer, the services and the whole suite of things that they're not even built yet. It's going to be exciting what comes. So how can they learn more and get involved with UREEQA?
So if you're in the crypto community, you're just interested in the project and following us, go to ureeqa.io. You'll read about the team, the product, the explainer videos on there. If you're a creator or want to sign up as a validator to earn UREEQA tokens during the closed beta, you can go to ureeqa.com and pre-register there. You can follow us on Twitter at UREEQA_Inc. Go to our Telegram channel at UREEQA, and search for UREEQA Medium. We're on there as well. I have a few articles on there, and with those, you'll have lots of information just with those.
Absolutely, mate. Well, you've heard it from the CEO of UREEQA. You've heard it from Harsch himself, speaking very candidly, very directly, and very openly, which I really appreciate. And again, so it's very clear, this was all entirely free. And I have had discussions with Harsch as I've done my due diligence myself. He's given me several hours of his time. And at this point, I am definitely considering investing in UREEQA myself. I see the potential in this, and I certainly encourage people to go and do their own due diligence. And this is not financial advice for you. It's simply educational value because you have the CEO right here. Now, I want to thank you again for your time in part one. Hopefully soon we can catch up and do part two, which will be focused on the tech talk. And then part three will be that very interesting one we have with the blockchain biz, which is really your skill set, your experience as well. So until then, thank you so much, Harsch, for introducing all of us to UREEQA. I wish you all the best as you find more nuggets of gold in the blockchain. And we'll catch up very soon, hopefully, for that part two session.
Thanks a lot, Brad. This was fun. We should do this again. Thanks.
You're welcome.